Hi friends, it's Hannah and I'm so glad you're here. Today we're going to be doing mix and match products for the fall. We're starting with a real sugar pumpkin from the grocery store and using Dollar Tree rub-on transfers. I used one package of these transfers and they were so easy to use. You just cut out a strip, you add the transfer on, it sticks to the pumpkin, and I rubbed mine with a paint stick, and when the ink no longer shows on the transfer, when it's clear like this, it is ready and you can pull it off and it stays permanently. I just evenly spaced all of the transfers and added different ones in different spaces, and I absolutely loved the way that this turned out. This is such an easy way to make your pumpkins beautiful. I had a black candlestick from the Dollar Tree and I just painted white stripes alongside of it. Placed my pumpkin on it and this project is complete. I love the way this pumpkin turned out. For the next project, I bought a white stacked pumpkin from Amazon and we're going to change it into a Mackenzie Childs inspired pumpkin. I just used masking tape and I went around the top with the masking tape. Now you'll see me. This is the second time I've gone around it with a pencil because it was so light I could hardly see it. But I did the same thing with two other pieces of masking tape and I made the lines on my pumpkin. And then I went along every crevice along the pumpkin and I just outlined it with a pencil, and you'll see how easy it is to do. And at this point, I found out that the pumpkins came apart. So I took them apart, and on the second pumpkin, I drew circles. And I just made sure that they weren't completely even. I used multi-surface black paint and a small flat brush, and I began filling in the squares on the largest pumpkin on the bottom. And this was easy to do because there was crevices on both sides of the pumpkin, and I just filled every other square in with the black paint. And once that I had done that, I set it to the side to dry, and then I added a kebab stick in the second pumpkin, and I began to fill in every other crevice with black paint so that we would get a black and white stripe on this pumpkin. And on the third pumpkin, I filled in all of the circles with the black paint. I used glossy white paint and a small flat brush, and I went around every pumpkin starting with the striped one just to make sure that the paint was even and that I was covering up any black paint that might have gotten into the spaces that should be white. And then I went over them again in the black paint, especially with the squares, and I just evened those out. But even those don't have to be perfect. We're going to go over all of these squares and all of the lines with a paint pen. And this is how the square looks, and here's the paint pen. I bought it at the Dollar Tree, and I decided to go with orange and be very festive. So I began by going around each circle with the paint pen, and I just took my time and followed the lines around the circles, and then I went into the crevices of the striped pumpkin, and I did the same thing. I filled it in, and I did the same thing with the squares. And then I placed all the pumpkins back together like they were. The skewers were already on them, and I added a fourth pumpkin. I painted it glossy white. I made the rickrack with orange paint, and I used one rub-on transfer, this one from the Dollar Tree, around the center, and then I hot glued it on, and I love the way this looks. And with that, this project is complete. For the next project, we're using a cat that we bought for $5 at Target, and we're going to make a Mackenzie Childs inspired cat named Alley Cat that's coming out of a pumpkin. And I think the face on this cat is so beautiful, I couldn't resist. So I took my Target plastic cat, and I began with white acrylic paint and a flat small paintbrush, and I painted the inside of the ears. And when I was done with that, I painted the collar all the way around the cat in white acrylic paint. I took the paintbrush and I tried to add just a little bit of white paint, but I added too much. I wanted to feather the white paint completely over the face of this cat, but I just went with it, and then I rubbed some of the paint off. And to get the face right, we're just going to use a combination of black and white paint and just keep working with it until we're happy. After I have the white paint on, I use black multi-surface paint and I feather over parts of the face, and I just continue to feather in more black paint as I go along, and I really rub the paint off of the paintbrush so that I can just feather it on. And then I outline the nose and right beneath the nose, and I think you saw me going around the collar right before that. And then I'm going to use a combination of yellow and gold multi-surface paint and go in and completely cover the eyes. I love the color of this. Now I'm going to use the black multi-surface paint and paint in the rest of the eyes, and it's so easy to paint the pupils in. There's an indentation inside each eye, and so you can just go straight in and add the indentation in black. And then I use brown paint from the Dollar Tree, and I end up mixing a little bit of gold with it, and I paint the nose. Now I'm going to use Mod Podge, and I'm going to cover the inside of each ear, and I'm going to add a black and white napkin. Make sure that the first square on the bottom of each ear matches up with the other ear, and you will get the most beautiful, perfect looking ears. And also don't forget to remove any layers that are attached to the napkin, only using the layer that has the design on it. And once they're on the ears, we're going to add Mod Podge to the collar. And actually, this is the hardest part of the project because it is hard to go around in a circle. So you need to tear pieces off because we want the collar to look straight. So we're going to add a little bit, and I'm using a straight line at the top of the collar. You can see I did not cut the napkin. I'm using the straight edge of the napkin because it matches up very well along the top of the collar. And I just add in a little piece at a time, and then I tear some off and I add another little piece at a time so that the collar all fits together, because we're doing a pattern and we want the pattern to match up just like you do in wallpaper. And you just take your time adding small bits until you have gone completely around the cat's collar, and then you cover it with Mod Podge and allow the Mod Podge to dry. And once it's dry, I just remove the excess napkin from the ears, and then I use 220 grit sandpaper and sanding in a backwards motion. Oh, here I'm also removing from the collar, but as you can see, it started to tear, so I stopped removing it from the collar and decided to work that out with sandpaper. So here I am using this sandpaper, going backwards only on the ears so that it will remove all of the extra napkin that's adhered to the ears. And then I'm going in and I'm doing the same thing with the bottom of the collar until it's straight all the way around. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to paint it with multi-surface black paint. We're going to go around the ears, and if you'll notice, I was very careful how I put the napkins into the ears, and the squares in the ears looks absolutely perfect. If you just take your time and line everything up, it makes all the difference in the world. And now I'm taking the black paint and I'm just evening out the collar on the bottom and making sure that it's straight, and using just a little bit more of that black paint to get exactly the face that I want on this kitty. Then I'm using metallic gold paint and a very thin brush, and we're going to give this cat a bell. And so this is part of what we're going to hang the bell from. And I had bought all these glitter balls from the Dollar Tree, and I used the tiniest one and I painted it with the metallic gold paint because I didn't want it to be glittery. And I added a drop of hot glue and I pressed it onto where I painted the hanging part for the bell, and I allowed the bell to dry. And with that, this project is complete. I just love our alley cat. And the next project is a wooden tree that I bought from the thrift store for $1.49. And we are going to do something a little bit different with this tree. We're going to begin by painting it completely white on the front and on the back. And I have decided to decoupage this, but when you decoupage something that has such tiny crevices, it's almost impossible to go in with sandpaper and get all of the extra napkin out. So we're going to use a different technique. I'm going to add Mod Podge, and then I need a big tin plate, a sprayer with water in it, a Mod Podge brush to paint with, a stiff brush, and a lighter. And I'm adding Mod Podge to the top of this tree, to the front of this tree. I'm giving it a good coat of Mod Podge. And I prepare my napkins ahead of time and make sure that you're only using the top layer of the napkin. I used black and white striped napkins, so these were just a little more difficult, but I didn't need to tear them. I kept the straight lines on them because I wanted all the lines to match up. I wanted to have the black and white striped look to go with the rest of the vignette that I am making, to make sure that they were all really going to work well in a mix and match decor. So I added the rest of the napkins, being very careful to line them up properly. And once I was done with that, and I made sure that they were all had Mod Podge all the way to the ends, I cut off any extra of the napkin, and then I removed everything from the large cookie sheet that I had on the table, except for the tree with the napkin on it. And be careful when you do this. Don't let children do it unsupervised, but you just light the napkin up and it automatically goes around the entire piece and removes any extra napkin. Just make sure that you have Mod Podge on all the pieces and it will remove it beautifully and go into all the crevices that you couldn't get if you were sanding them. And if there's any little pieces left, just poke a hole with the scissors and add a little bit more fire. And I did this to both sides of this tree, and I absolutely love the way that it turned out. It ended up looking like an old tree because some of the edges of the paper had a little burned look, and on one side of the tree the paper wasn't even, so I decided to paint in a pumpkin, and I added orange paint. And then when that was dry, I added, I'm sorry I did this part off camera, but I just added more orange paint to the pumpkin using a small brush and orange from the Dollar Tree. I used brown from the Dollar Tree and white paint, and I just painted the pumpkin in to cover the uneven lines. And with that, this project is complete. And here are all the pieces in the vignette. They mix and match beautifully. I so enjoyed making these projects for you, and I hope that they inspire you to make something beautiful. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with your friends, like, subscribe, and hit the notification button, and that way you'll be notified the next time I make a video. Until then, thanks again so much, and I will see you next time.